this week's tutorial I'm going to show you how to crochet the Granny Chevron stitch. Really simple, beautiful, one row repeated pattern after you get past your setup rows, and it really is just a gorgeous stitch. I decided to do mine in dual colours, but you could equally do this with one colour, two colours, or as many colours as you would like. So let's have a look at the tutorial. So for this tutorial I've decided to use 3 different colours. These are all Arons, they're all Stylecraft Arons. You can do this in one colour, you can do it in 2 colours, 3, 4, 5, however many you want. I'm going to use the corresponding hook size, so as I said these are Aran or worceted weight. So I'm using a 5mm crochet hook, I have scissors to cut off my end, and I have stitch markers because they will come in useful later on. So we're going to start off by making a foundation chain, so make a slip knot in whichever way you prefer. Now our foundation chain is made in multiples of 25 plus 3 extras for turning, and those 25 are going to give us our peak and our valley, so you need 25 stitches to get sort of one mountain if you like. So yarn over, pull through, that's one chain, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So this will give us our peak and our mountain. Now you need to decide how long you want or how wide you would like your piece of work to be, and then think about how much extra you're going to need to do. So normally you would go, right, well I would like it this wide, but remember your chain is going to be shortened by making the little peaks. So have a think about how long you actually want your piece to be. Maybe do a sample couple of rows just so you know you've got exactly the right size, and then you're good to go. Now I would pop a stitch marker on every 25th chain just so you know where your valleys are going to be, so the bottom of the mountains. It'll just make life a little easier later on. So then I'm going to do my next set of 25, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, until I have the number that I would like, and then I'll do my 3 extra for turning at the end. So pause the video now whilst you make your foundation chain. So I'm just going to do a sample piece here. So I have 25 stitches there, so that's 1 peak, 2 peaks and 3 peaks, so it's 25, 50, 75, and then I'm going to do my 3 extras, so that's 1, 2, 3, and I'm ready to start doing row 1. So row 1 is a setup row, and row 2 is the repeater pattern throughout the whole piece. So we're going to start by making 3 trebles into the same chain. Now that's known as the granny cluster, 3 trebles. And we're going to do that in the 6th chain from the hook. So we never count the one on the hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So to do that we yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over through 2, yarn over through 2. That's our first treble. Remember, if you're working in US terms, that's going to be a double crochet. So another treble into the same chain, yarn over through 2, yarn over through 2, and then another treble into the same chain again. So that's our 3 chains in our granny cluster. We're then going to skip the next 2 chains, so skip, skip, and we're going to put a cluster into the next stitch. So that's 1 and 2 and 3, skip 2, 1, 2, and then put a cluster into the next stitch. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Skip 2, 1, 2, and a cluster into the next stitch. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if you remember sets of 4, that will really help you working on this piece. So we've got 4 clusters now, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's going to make our first vertical, if you like, going up. We're then going to chain 2, 1, 2, and we've got to work back down the peak. So into the same chain we're going to do another 3 clusters, or another 3 trebles to make a cluster. 1, 2, and 3. Skip 2, 1, 2, and then a treble cluster into the next stitch. So we had 4 coming up, that's the first one going down, so that's 1, skip 2 chains and a cluster, that's 2 clusters, skip 2 chains, 1, 2, we'll make our third cluster, so 1, 2, and 3, skip 2, 1, 2, and do our fourth cluster, that's 1, 2, and 3. So if we just have a little look at what we've got so far. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 clusters going up, 1, 2, 3, 4 clusters coming down. We're then going to skip the next 5 chains. So this is going to give us our trough. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we've got our little penguin in the way there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in the 6th one, we're going to do our 3 trebles cluster. So that's 1, 2, 3. And then essentially we're carrying on from before. So the one we've just made is the first cluster of the next mountain rise. So skip 2, 1, 2, 3 trebles, 1, 2, 3, that's the second cluster, skip 2, 1, 2, do the third cluster, that's 1, 2, and 3, skip 2 chains, 1, 2, do the fourth cluster, that's 1, 2, and 3. So we started at the bottom again, worked our way up, 1, 2, 3, 4, and when we get to the top there we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to put another cluster into the same stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3. Let's just lay that out and see how we've done so far. So we have 1 cluster, 2 clusters, 3 clusters, 4 clusters going up, 1, 2, 3, 4 coming down. We don't chain here, we chain 2 there to give us that little bit extra space, but on the way down we want to bring it in again, so we skipped 5 chains, and then in the 6th chain we started the next row of clusters. So 1, 2, 3, 4, then we chain 2 like we did at the top here, and we're going to do 4 again, so that counts as 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we'll do our 5 chains, and in the 6th chain we do our first of the next set of clusters on the rise. So we're going to work the same way all the way down the row until you get to your last 3 chains, and I shall see you at the end of the row. So I'm just coming up to the end of my row, so I've done my last 1, 2, 3, 4 sets. I've got my last 3 stitches remaining. I'm going to skip 2, and in the very last stitch I'm going to put in a treble. Remember, in US terms that would be a double. So I like to do 2 rows of 1 colour before changing. If you want to change colour every row you can, but I prefer to do it on 2 rows. So for row 2 then I'm going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, that counts as the treble here, and we're going to turn our work. Now we're going to ignore this turning chain gap here, and we're going to work into the space created by the 2 groups of trebles. And in there we're going to do our treble cluster, so 3 trebles. Sorry about that. So that's 1, 2, and 3. Skip to the next pair of clusters and working into the gap between those with 3 trebles. 1, 2, and 3. Skip the gap here and do your 3 trebles. 1, 2, and 3. And then we arrive at the peak and we're going to do 3 trebles in there as well. 1, 2, and 3. And as we did on the previous row, it's going to chain 2, so that can take us over the mountain to then start working back down the valley, and 3 trebles into the same chain space. So that's 1, 2, and 3. Skip to the next space, 3 trebles, 1, 2, and 3. Skip to the next one, it's 1, oops, 2, and 3. Skip to the next space, which is the one just before the valley. Do our 3 trebles in there. 1, 2, and 3. So you've got your 4 groups of trebles there, and then you've got your valley stitch here. So what we're going to do is to skip this section of chain from the foundation chain, and we're going to skip right across to the next space that's between the 2 clusters, working back up the next side. So skip this bit here and work into this bit here, and you're going in again with 3 clusters, so skip that bit there and into the the one between the clusters going back up the hill. 2 and 3. Oops. Now it's 3. And that's how you get to keep your V's for your valley still going. If you start crocheting into the gaps here, you're going to end up, well, with a bit of a mess, frankly. It's not going to look anything like it's supposed to. So now you just keep working up and down the peak. So when you get to the top of the peak, 3 trebles, chain 2, 3 trebles, and when you get to the bottom, skip and go to the next cluster chain space on the next side. So work your way to the end of the row, and I shall show you what to do at the end of the row. So I've just worked my last cluster space, so 1, 2, 3, 4. I've come to the end, and we're going to be working into the 3 chain space, and into there we're going to do a treble. Now you can either work into the space or you can work into the very last chain of that 3 chain, entirely up to you. I'm going to work into the chain just because I think it gives a slightly neater edge to your work. I'm going in with the treble, sorry, so I yarned over, inserted, yarn over, pull through, and I'm going to change colour on this row, so I'm going to pick up my new yarn and finish off that treble with my new yarn. Now if you're working this every 2 rows, you can leave your colour attached and just carry it up the side if you're going to be putting a border on, or you can cut it off and sew it in afterwards. It's entirely up to you. So now we're just going to repeat the row we just did. So we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, turn our work, and if your work's starting to curl, don't worry, it will flatten out a bit once you've got more rows on your project. So remember, we skip that first chain space. Let me just tighten that up a bit. We skip that first chain space and we work into the chain space created between the 2 clusters there with our 3 trebles. So that's 1, 2 and 3. Into the next space, 1, 2 and 3, into the next space, 1, 2, 3, into the peak, 1, 2 and 3, chain 2, another set of clusters into the peak, so 1, 2, 3, working your way back down the valley now into the spaces with 3 trebles, 1, 2 and 3, into the next space, oops, with 1, 2, 3, into the next space with 1, 2 and 3, skip over the middle space and work into the space between the clusters on the other side. So we skip that one out at the bottom of the valley and we start work on the next set of clusters going up the hill. And we just continue that way all the way to the end of our blanket. So I'm going to work up a few more rows now for you to see how it looks, and I shall see you in a moment. So I've just worked up a few more rows for you to see how it looks, and I've done 2 rows in each of the colours. The eagle-eyed amongst you might notice that I didn't actually use the blue. When I look closer, this blue is actually a DK and the rest of these were Aran. So I changed to this lovely green, which actually I think works better, makes it more of a sort of jewel colour piece, which I really like. Really lovely pattern. Now I did 75 chains to start with. That gave me 3 little mountains, if you like. So you need to work out sort of how wide your mountain is to work out how many stitches you're going to need in order to get the width that you like. So if you've enjoyed this tutorial, please give it a thumbs up. It really does help YouTube to show it to other crocheters. If you've enjoyed seeing my little penguin stitch markers today, they're available in my Shopify shop and also on my Etsy shop. I'll pop a link around the video somewhere for you to go directly to Shopify, and I'll pop a link in the description to the Shopify and also to my Etsy shop if you prefer to shop that way. I'm going to pop 2 more videos over on the side of the screen here to help you on your crochet journey, and I shall see you over there. Thank you so much for joining me on this one, and happy hooking!